It's
Good
recording.
evening. It's a Business World telecast, Business World TV telecast. We welcome Dr. Velumani, who's the founder of Thyrocare, a pioneering entrepreneur, an excellent motivational speaker, a leader who makes sense even when he's making you smile, or when he's making you smile, he still makes sense. So, Dr. Velu, welcome to BWTV and our conversation. These
Thank
are
you,
very
Anurag.
challenging times. What is keeping you happy and motivated?
Well, that's an attitude. Fortunately, I have been like this. I have seen tougher times. So, what makes someone progress is looking at everything happening around positive. In every challenge, you can see an opportunity. Even in this crisis, we see opportunities. I think it is hell or heaven, it is only in your mind, though you are only on the earth. If you are positive, it's heaven. And I have been looking at whatever is happening around as an opportunity.
Dr. Velumani, hi.
And why do you say it's an opportunity?
When on this earth, nothing can be created, nothing can be destroyed. That is the law of physics. If somebody's lost, somebody else's benefit. If one industry is suffering, other industry will grow. So whenever you look at anything, you look at what is the good and bad in it and orient yourself towards the good. I think that's an opportunity. I am pretty sure the world order will be very different. I was born poor, but then that was before the crisis. At the crisis, all of us are equally poor. Now, what will help us is our grit, our ability to take decisions, our confidence to move ahead. I think still Japan today is most powerful country only after that Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So every crisis gives rise to some new avatar, higher discipline, better progress, prosperity. I am pretty sure good, powerful, capable CEOs will make it very large post-corona crisis.
Good. See, since it's a healthcare crisis in some way, and then it has an impact on economy. Let me first ask you about what do you feel about the Prime Minister and government's decision of lockdown, and how has it helped us?
I think we have handled COVID very well. I think that's the right word. Though opposition might tell that, you didn't do this, you don't do that. But all governments, irrespective of whichever is the party, central and state governments were panicked and they had to do something and they have done whatever they could do. But having said that, we are not a country having that much cash reserves as much as Western world has got. So, unfortunately, we keep comparing Western world and we start mocking the Indian administration. Why you can't do that? We have a low per capita income. So with limitations in hand, Indian government has done wonderful. A. B. India as a country is blessed with lot of advantages, which I think no one expected. I did think about it a couple of weeks back. I have been tweeting about what advantages India has got. Ever since I understood the fatality is more in old and not in young, I got a great confidence because India is an young country. Mean age of India is 28. Mean age of all these countries which had seen calamity are 40 plus, 45 plus. So that is one thing which I was pretty happy about when we consider India's age. And number two, number of people above 60 years of age is very, very little in our country. Whereas in all developed markets, old markets, the old population is too high. So that is number one advantage we had got. Number two advantage is, with all said and done, India has been living in villages, unhygienic conditions, low income, and Indians have got used to every pathogen possible around. In fact, I will ask you a question. If somebody from New York comes to India for 10 days and goes back, he will have 10 illnesses. Somebody from Patna goes to New York and comes back, he will not have an illness because he has seen worst of it. So Indians have advantage of having lot of exposure to various illnesses, which the Western population was pampered immunity, which collapsed, whereas ours was a well-developed immunity, according to me. I am a scientist. The next point is Indians had a tuberculosis burden. Because there was a tuberculosis burden, we were very serious about BCG program, BCG, which was a vaccination done at elementary school and primary school level, even much before that. Western world felt we don't have TB and they didn't have a BCG program. When you map BCG countries and non-BCG countries, there is a stark difference that BCG countries have a better control, lesser infection, lesser mortality. So I think that also is contributing. The last point, which is also equally important, is a malaria. And malaria, chloroquine has, once again, there is an overlap of TB countries and malaria countries. And these two together were ignored by the Western world. So they are facing the brunt of it. And we probably are, today I have seen the number is only 505 deaths in a population of 1.35 billion population. We have 4 distinct advantages in handling this COVID. Number one, we have immunity which is not pampered, which means the Western world, because they had money, because they could afford, they could live with least pathogen environment. India has been traditionally a poor country, a village-based a kind of environment. So we have seen worst of the pathogens. Our children bleed a lot in the first 5 years of life. In fact, our mortality rate in the infancy is high. That means jo bach gaya, those individuals have higher levels of combating
immunity.
pathogens. So that's number one. Number two, of course, it in fact is number one, that is India is an young country. In the last week of January, I found in the death profile, that means people who have died in Wuhan, the old, that is 60 plus, was majority, and 60 minus was minority, and less than 40 were very little. I got an inclination that time itself. India is an young country, mean age is 28 years, we are safe. Western countries, developed markets, the mean age is 45 plus or minus 3-4, which means they are at a higher risk. And let me tell you, the percentage of population above 60 in India is 3-4% only. In the Western world, it is 18 to 20%. So why is that so much of casualty in New York, in London, and in parts of Europe? It is because in spite of having higher bed numbers per thousand, doctor numbers per thousand, nurses per thousand, they were old and they could not manage the outcome. So when it comes to India, its mean age is 28 years and we have controlled it well. So there was a pathogen managing immunity with Indians, and there is an age which is supporting. Number three, India had a tuberculosis burden. It has been there for 100 years. Unfortunately, India has had it. And this burden brought in the BCG program. The BCG program was to control TB. We were immunized with BCG. The Western world felt tuberculosis is not our problem. Tuberculosis problem of the underdeveloped, and they did not follow a BCG regime. Today, when you map countries with BCG regime, countries did not follow the BCG regime. There is a stark difference in the fatality. The next is malaria and chloroquine. Once again, the tropical countries around the equator, are the countries which were having the problem of tuberculosis and malaria. And these are the countries today are having a safety net. And that is what I believe. Number one is ability to manage pathogen, low mean age, and BCG program support and malaria management. All four together have helped. Not to tell that lockdown didn't help. Lockdown was in right time. Had there not been a lockdown, we would have had some kind of a crisis. Lockdown delayed it. These four parameters have given an advantage that today we see. I want you to understand that if you list the countries in the descending order of number of deaths per million, there are 100 countries who have lost, 26 countries who have lost more than 100 lives. Of all this, India is the least, bottom of the list. We have only lost 0.4 per million, whereas Western world has lost in hundreds per million. So we have got advantage. If you want me to conclude, India has won it. India is out of the worst calamities of what Italy had seen, what London has seen, what New York has seen. India will have some casualties, but we are safer than many of the Western world.
Dr. Velumani, the testing has ramped up in the last few weeks. What do you have to say about the ramped up testing, and what do you have to say to people who say testing is not, our numbers are low because we are not testing enough?
Yeah, let me tell you, in case of COVID, testing has not offered any advantage except knowledge for the government about the progress of the disease. Simply because the test positive does not alter the course of management of COVID, which means positive or negative, you are having flu-like symptoms and you are supposed to be quarantined till such period it becomes worse. If it becomes worse, get into a hospital and manage it. If it is giving you a relief, after 15 days, you can take care of your routine. So testing has not truly helped in what you call as management. But you know, the Western world has too much of money. I have noticed roughly around $25 billion, $25 billion approximately, 10 times more than India has been spent by the Western world. 10 times more. But if testing helps, they would have had lesser death per million than India. So what is obvious? Obvious is testing is for knowledge. Testing is not the solution. Testing will not reduce the fatality. Testing could help you to, even the distance by quarantining people. India very frugally tested very little, and it was great of Indian administration to think very early that testing is not going to help. Quarantining will help, distancing will help. Let me tell you, this mask program which has come very late. WHO did not advise it. Indian government did not advise it. Had we all 1.3 billion population own a homemade mask in the first week of March, I think even 500 would have not died. This is my observation. So it is much simpler to manage. Testing is not truly test done per million and deaths per million. There is no correlation.
But just to go ahead, sir, go ahead. To play devil's advocate.
Go ahead.
Just to play devil's advocate, there may be districts where the people affected, but they're staying in their home, they're suffering, and they're possibly some of them are dying, but they're not being counted, and they're not being counted as carriers. So is that a possibility that the numbers are underreported because a large number are not being actually diagnosed?
Anurag, the numbers could be 100% underreported in the worst case.
Okay.
That means 500 death could be 1,000. But 1,000 is too little.
Relatively
too little. They have lost 100 per million. population, 100 per million. We are only 0.4 per million. It could be 0.8. It could be even 1.6. So we are safe. It is no under reporting.
Are we ready to deal with such pandemics in the future? Is the Indian healthcare system learned something to deal with such pandemics in the future?
Anurag, this kind of pandemic, one cannot be prepared. Disaster means a disaster. One would not know what kind of disaster comes and what it really can, put into trouble. This disaster is a true disaster for developed markets, because developed markets have older people. There is a correlation between per capita income and the age of the individuals. So India has had an advantage, and I believe we are going to manage COVID very well. But I don't think we know what is likely to come in next 10, 20 years, because no one expected COVID to happen.
And what do you think of Supreme Court decision of making private testing free a right decision?
See, with all said and done, public interest litigations can truly be troubling every administration. I think there was a request, there was a pressure, and Supreme Court felt that, why common man has to pay, why not government can pay? There was no representation from government to listen what kind of challenges they have got. So Supreme Court did order that tests should be done free of cost. Now, this comes as a very big blow, and it also said the government to work out a mechanism to pay to the laboratories for making it free. Now, government is in a soup, because that will run into huge bills, which they can't truly today in this situation too. And also government is aware that the testing is not true diagnostic solution. So they went back after 3 days, and the Supreme Court heard them, and they already are providing, using Ayushman, a free testing, free treatment, everything in Ayushman hospitals. And government felt, and they rightly felt so, real poor will go through Ayushman. The rich only will go to private laboratories. And if the rich go to private laboratories, let them pay, because government wants everybody to, shoulder the budget, the burden. So I am fully well convinced that if the testing is seen, 90% will be only above the midpoint of the pyramid. Only 10% will be below the midpoint of the pyramid, not because they don't become ill. It is because they may not even have resources to reach to a hospital and do the testing. They may get cured without that. So government has saved a lot of money, and it is good to hear that the rich will pay for themselves, for poor government will pay. Indian government is doing some subsidy, state governments are doing some subsidy. For us sitting in Mumbai, even BNC is doing a lot of support, getting a lot of CSR funds. So I think it is good, and the SC has correctly, that is Supreme Court has correctly, timely modified it. Otherwise, it would have been a very big burden on government of India.
Thank you so much. One more, crisis separates leaders from leaders. What kind of leadership is needed in these times? And what do you have to say to other leaders? We can all learn from each other.
Anurag, unfortunately, our way of learning business is going to business schools and seeing how businesses were run, and businesses were run in good times. Businesses were run by huge investments, and basics are in place. But that is not the true business. Businesses are very dynamic, changing. Every 5 years it is changing. So 25 years back, business school teaching today is not relevant. That's number one. Number two, all CEOs, all.
So you want me to go to a business school again? I went to a business school.
It's not too late. You are too young to go, but you keep learning where you are. I never went to a business school. I don't think business school going is truly learning leadership. It is only helping you to add little more. Number one, today, 95% of the leaders only can run the running vehicle efficiently. They can't create a vehicle and run it. Number one. Number two, the vehicle becomes sick, ill because of this kind of disaster and calamity. They just don't know what will work to make it again stand and run it. So I am seeing for the last 1 month, many people have just given up and relaxing, thinking that something will happen. Let me rework on it once lockdown is over. Once government announces me some subsidy, let me look at it. Let me tell you, it truly is testing your ability, A, energy level, B, decision making, C, courage to take that decision and implement, energy levels, focus levels, communication levels, everything at its peak, so that you get up fast and you run ahead of it. So there are challenges. Today, plenty of CEOs, appointed CEOs, given just a target. Look, guy, I am running at 23% EBITDA. You need to make sure you are adding 2 more percent. That is much simpler. There is a likelihood EBITDA levels 23% has come down to 2%. How will you build it back? That's the true testing time. A lot need to be learned.
So how do you build it back? How do you build it back? And let me ask you a very personal question. Let me ask you,
yes.
In COVID times, testing for, let's say, ThyroCare was founded on a premise of, thyroid and, testing. You pioneered that and you took it to masses. You made it affordable, right? And you built a scale. Now, all other testing, mostly in all labs, has come down to a standstill, right? If zero or close to zero, right?
Yes.
Now, the focus is not on that. So how does one build business? Similarly, if you look at airlines, you look at restaurants, there are lots of businesses I can name which have suddenly become standstill. Their fixed costs stay, their employees stay. So how does one prepare for the future? And how do you make the best of what you have?
Yeah, Anurag, there is something known as preparedness. Lucky are those who are prepared when the opportunity came. I must tell you, when SARS came 6 years back, I was not into microbiology testing because I was a mathematician, started only lifestyle disorder, and I had no inclination. But 3-4 years back, we felt that we must manage tuberculosis because tuberculosis is a big menace. Let us look at it from even CSR angle. It doesn't matter if it doesn't make profit. Let us work on it. So for 3-4 years back, I landed into tuberculosis. Now government approves and gives me a testing approval for COVID. Now COVID is very new to me. But within 20 days, Anurag, we have reached to the highest capacity of 1,000 per day, which is no one in the country is doing. Trust me, had that business been also parallelly running, I would have not mastered this to this extent. Today, I have got around 40% of the turnover only from COVID in my total business, which means when non-COVID business resumes, I should be doing 150% of what I was doing in January 2020. So that is known as was prepared. I thank my stars because my employees ask me, sir, where from you got this idea to start microbiology just 2-3 years back? So I think a few things helped me, and I have been sitting in the cockpit and my people are running. Anurag, it is lockdown, and how do you get the specimen? And Anurag, the biggest challenge is blood collection is much simpler. You don't need to wear a PPE. Now PPE is costly for each patient. PPE was 1,200 rupees in my first 1,000 patients. We have to go to their home collecting. The swab is a very different, totally different technology. It is like a cab driver running helicopter. So to that extent, it was challenge. But I must tell you, एक हिंदी में एक पंचलाइन है, निकल पड़ो रास्ता अपने आप बनता है. तो मैं तो निकल पड़ा. आज I am very happy to tell our people have completed 6,000 investigations, and our team is feeling confident, and they feel they can scale it to 60,000 also, even within 6 months period. So that and all is ability. But I will tell you, I am fortunate to be in healthcare. The need of the hour is healthcare. In healthcare, they have completely closed down non-COVID. and they have focused only on COVID. So a kind of support for healthcare is happening even today. All my competitors are doing fairly business which is not distress. But I agree with you, travel tourism is gone completely. Hospitality industries are gone completely. In fact, 60% of the hospitals are closed down because some of the nurses and doctors are infected with COVID. So it's a very, serious, gloomy, even for healthcare industry. But it's a matter of weeks or months, it will pass through.
Abhinav, you can come in, but because I've known Dr. Velumani for a while.
You can
And,
continue.
So you can. I want to ask him a real question. Let me tell you, when COVID started in mid-March, and we on 16th March, 1 week before the government declared work from home, and I can say from 23rd March till 30th March, I was very worried. I was confused. I was lost, and I'm being very, very real with you, and very authentic. And in the last 20 days, I managed to see hope. I've managed to gather myself into action. What do leaders, entrepreneurs do to get clarity for themselves, to get into an action mode, to be able to, create themselves for future? And even in a pre-COVID world, we would use the word pivot, orbit change a lot. But you have in some way pivoted. I mean, the pivot may have come from the environment, but the fact that you were able to respond. So tell people like me who struggle for 1 week, 2 weeks because of uncertainty. We have commitments on salaries. We have commitments on, people. We have, suddenly all that, the landscape change, the rules change. And again, like we in business world are moving 100% into digital transformation. We're moving into video. We're doing a video interview with you. So we see an opportunity, and I'm more, optimistic on the future than I ever was. And I'm real. If I'm saying this to you, you can trust me that I am optimistic. So I'm saying, but I did feel confused. I did feel lost. I did feel, what to do. Say in around 25th March, I was like overthinking for 2 days. So give us some tips to entrepreneurs. It's human to be lost.
Anurag, I think we all had such a crisis where the virus is threatening. We are suddenly seeing Prime Minister addressing to Chief Ministers all in video conference, and all are on a mask. And the IPS, IAS officers sitting behind the MLAs are also in mask. It gives a feeling that we are seeing a fiction movie, but movie is not ending at all. That is the biggest stress. But having said that, all businessmen, irrespective of which industry they were in, whoever were clocking revenues per day, sometimes in crore, 1 crore, sometimes even 100 crore, all of them had to just close down and observe this virus passing by. With fear some, with panic some, with some cash balance, some without cash balance, with some understanding employees who will work with half salary till the crisis is over. Some will not work, but then some took a decision not to bother. Some took a decision, where will I get people if I don't take care of them? In fact, this is the crisis where one will know who is a good employer, and one will also know who is the best employee. So that is the crisis part. But I am telling you, we have taken a vacation of March, April, and probably May. If we didn't have reserves for a 3 months vacation, if we are running from month to month, week to week, and we were not having any liquidity to manage the crisis if it arises, be it an individual running a family, be it a MD running an organization, or being a prime minister running a country, some reserves are needed. Without the reserves, it's not easy. And when you have reserves, you can pause, you can relax, You can reinvent what way you will strategize and go and approach the market tomorrow. What are all your strengths compared to what are all your peers? What are all your industry's pains because of COVID, and how am I going to come out of it? Trust me, everybody will be doing wonderfully. But I read somewhere, in fact, I was listening to an interview in CNN, that individual said, post corona, 50% of businessmen will not be doing that business which they did before corona. And 50% of the employees will not come to that employer post corona. That is very certain. So these are all uncertainties. So having said that, like you, there have been many who have seen. Can you imagine how the CEO or the board of Indigo will be frustrated to see all its fleet standing for 20 days? All pilots must tell you, it is always good to see you are in problem, but it is always better to see somebody else with more and bigger problems. Businesses have got past. There are some who had no profit, 5%, 10% profit, and all of them have lost the turnover, but expenditures have not gone down. And there are some companies with 30%, 40% margin. They are managing to a certain extent. But having said that, it was a tough time for the government, for the companies, for the nifty companies, for the medium, small industries, even for the guys who were running a small enterprise in a street corner. All have suffered. But I think it is over. According to me, by first week of May, 50% of the business would have got back to 50% of their turnovers.
Very good. That's an optimistic me. Dr. Velumani, you had some rules of entrepreneurship and we benefited through your journey. Are there new rules of entrepreneurship? Has some old rules stay, and what are the new rules?
I think the old goes and new comes, but rules don't change. Some had advantage because of father giving in the hands in completely ready-made. People who had monopoly for decades, they have continued. This all is less likely to have advantage, though there is a likelihood they will have a lot of expertise to continue the business a bit faster and bit better. But I think a lot of new lessons are: be frugal, don't overborrow. If you have EMIs too much, any small problem comes, you will suffer. I think man's needs have come down. So man's purchases will be low. That means the turnovers will be low. But having said that, that's a relative index. I don't think that truly will be a pain. I think it will be a new order. With my limited knowledge, cannot truly tell post-COVID what will happen. But having said that, I have tweeted a couple of times, and it is my wish. It was felt that India will take at least 40 years to be number one in GDP in the world. I must tell you, it has become half. Within 20 years, India will be number one.
And why do you say that?
You may ask why. The rich will become poor. If you look at the way in which they have spent to manage COVID, number one. Number two, the way in which they have old population, which complicated healthcare needs. Their GDP is 17% of their GDP is spent in their healthcare. India spends only 2.5%. So if you ask me, the GDP growth of West will get into minus for next 10 years, Anurag, trust me, because they have got into such a severe distress. They don't know where they are. The governor of New York is pleading to the rest of the governors to send supports. In fact, in India, we have a wonderful system, a better prime minister and better coordination among states. In there, it appears that they have, given the calamity, they are crumbling. I'm not referring to only US, it's Germany, it's Italy, it's UK. These were the guys who were in the G7, G5. Trust me, in another 10 years, India will be number 2, China will be number 1, and in another 10 years, India will be number 1, simply because, I must tell you, this is my punchline. For us, 130 crores of intestine was a liability. So we had to go slow in the per capita income growth. Trust me, now it is 2.70 hands billion, 2.70 billion hands and 1.35 brains. That means India is going to be there. It is this COVID which made sure India doesn't suffer. India has been relatively safer. The rich are suffering. If the rich suffer, rich will become poorer and poor will become richer. दिन रात होता है, रात दिन होता है. It is a transformation. I must tell you, COVID is helping India in many ways after taking away few lives.
And which sectors in India will do well? You obviously said
Every
healthcare.
sector India will do well. Which sector will do well or not do well will depend upon the sector, not on the country. I think
But in
the
India,
country will do well because lot of strength we have got in terms of science, technology, HR. I think we have started moving ahead. For the last 10 years, we have done wonderful. Except last 2 years, we have suddenly had a problem of our GDP growth coming down less than 5. But it will go to 3 or 2 or 1 for 1 or 2 years, and it will be back 10 to 10. I'm pretty clear India will be GDP 10 in another 5 years, at least 2 years.
let me ask you another two questions. And I know Abhinav may not agree with these two questions, but one, the way Prime Minister Modi has led, and it is very easy to criticize. I don't think it's the time to criticize. I think he's done an outstanding job. Of course, there are things he can do better on economy, we have expectations, all that. But in saving human lives, in leading from the front, communicating, engaging, and then helping, while he turned a, let's say, a forced initiative into an opportunity, the way we provided, a certain, drug to the US, to other parts of the world. So do you think Modi, though we have another month, 2 months, hopefully 6 months before we can come to a verdict on how the country and how the government and how the Prime Minister handled the COVID, but do you think looks like Modi has really done a good job, and do you think he should get a Nobel Peace Prize? That's my first question. Second thing is, there will be a reconstruction needed, not in the way it was, like, Vikramaditya built a new India. Do you think post-COVID Modi will build a new India where the Indian traditional strengths, and let me talk of Ayurveda, let me talk of Ayush, they were not considered mainstream in the way, because, if you do yoga and your respiratory system is good, you can increase your immunity and deal with COVID and everything better. So do you think there will be a new India, and can we call Modi the new Vikramaditya?
Yeah, now let me answer to your first question. I think
And it's a serious question.
before telling our Prime Minister very powerfully managed it, let me tell what went wrong for Trump and what went right for Mr. Modi. Trump had a calamity in hand because he was handling old population, and it was high infection and too much of stressful situation for him. As such, politically also he was facing a lot of turmoil. India had a cool, very composed Prime Minister, and India Prime Minister was lucky to have a mean age of Indians 28, and all those parameters which I have said has supported our Prime Minister. And if you think the verdict is still not out, let me tell you, and let us congratulate Prime Minister. The verdict is out. Today we have lost only 500 plus individuals, and it is safely landed. Our flight has very safely landed. Now, how do we manage the post-landing, and how are we going to handle it is much easier to manage than what crisis would have pushed us into a huge calamity and distress. So if you ask me, the verdict is almost out. I call it as exit polls are well done, and we are very safe, and we must congratulate for the country of India first and for the Prime Minister next. And the Prime Minister has taken a very bold decision to put the entire country in a lockdown, because today's verdict is fortunate. So many parameters we understand. 20 days back, it was a lot of doubt how this virus will be different from the rest of the countries. It might also collapse us, and it was good we were panicked. But right now it is time for the government to do an unlocking, which I call as calibrated, phased, monitored, and controlled unlocking, so that industries will come back and do what they are meant to do. So if you ask me, the verdict is out, and we must congratulate Government of India, led by the Prime Minister, and all will have to feel relaxed. All financial wizards to industrial wizards to everybody can relax that we are safer. May not be safest. We will still lose some lives, but not the ratio, what you call as death per million, will not be even 1/10 of Western world. So that's verdict is done. Now, what will be the phase number 2 post coronavirus? I think whether the Prime Minister truly pushes or not, I'm pretty sure he knows what it is. He had come up with Ayushman just a year back, but he will also push 3 things which are very vital. One is wellness, another is nutrition, third one is fitness. So these 3 are going to be playing a very huge role. Anybody who does business in these 3 areas are likely to get a lot of push, a lot of what you call as tailwinds, and will move very fast. So Modi also has been practicing, pushing towards the traditional measures of pain relieving, better health, better immunity, better flexibility, better fitness, better strength. I think yoga is wonderful. Yoga will do a lot of things. So which industry to be given priority will not be just one individual's decision. I think the group of ministers, group of the advisors in the ministry will tell which one would make India A, strong, B, powerful, and gives long-term prosperity. So we have got time. Like I said, the big will have bigger challenges. India will have smaller challenge. In per capita income list, India is very, very small, $2,000 per annum, whereas US is $40,000 per annum, 20 times. But they will find it extremely difficult to sustain. India will slowly and steadily go up. I am expecting lot of restructuring politically, administratively, because it is an opportunity for us to rework, experiment, and explore, and find out what works better for us, and then continue it, rather than continuing the old vehicle, old system, and old hierarchies.
Abhinav?
Yes, sir. I have nothing to add.
You want to-
No.
So I want to ask you my last question. In the industry, whether it's SME, whether it's business owners which are mid-size, large size, there is an expectation, especially in the SME and the business segment, of an economic package from the government. If you look at UK, the UK government pretty much wrote a blank check for the economy and said, if your employer is unable to pay you, we'll pay you 80% of the salary. So it took the load of the employer. Here, while the government has rightly said, don't lay off people, try and look at them, and RBI has given liquidity measures. 3 weeks back, the FM had given a set of measures for the government. There is a direct benefit transfer to a lot of people. The government has done its bit, but still there is an expectation. The Business World cover story last week said that, at least at that point, 10,000 crores are required. 10 lakh crores are required from the government. Now, what do you think the government can do to help entrepreneurs, SMEs, and the industry and economy?
Anurag, again, this Padosi comparison, it will not work. Padosis were rich. Padosis have huge reserves, and all these developed markets did not have any challenge in giving $1,000 or $5,000 for even every common man. In India, it's not easy even to give a $50 to every poor man. So India has challenges. India doesn't have a capability to support in a large scale. We can't compare. US gave 2 trillion, 3 trillion. Why not we? Not that simple. Let's agree with that. Number one. Number two, I think all businessmen have to find how to restart even without government supporting in any way. We should be prepared because it is our duty to find out our own way of doing. When I came to Mumbai, I didn't expect anyone would support. I came with kind of face the worst. But then I was lucky to get a lot of supports from various quarters, but it will come. I think government will subsidize electricity. Government will subsidize a lot more what you call as custom duties and various other things. Government doesn't have money to roll out, but government would help to people by, or the MSMEs by giving loans without interest or some waive off in that loans also. But I don't think we should expect that government will compensate for all the pains which we had undergone. We will undergo for next couple of quarters. That is impossible. It is too huge budget for government. I don't think government has that kind of money. Though, dil mange more. Everyone thinks we should get more. And everybody can ask for more. I think asking is nothing wrong. Everybody, the crying child only gets the milk. So everybody can cry. But I don't think we have got that much of money to really support. Let me tell you, nothing has gone wrong. All of us have slept for a week, for a month or 2 or 3. And let me tell you, all India Inc. and their employees, what is that they should do. Guys, for a month or 2, depending upon when your industry is back to fully operating, you have been working from home. You didn't go to office. Trust me, once you are back to your office, don't go home. If 1 quarter you couldn't work, doesn't matter. If you can work for 3 quarters without going home, you don't need any government support, and you will be back with what you were in January 2020 when you are in April 2021. So it's a matter of hard work. It is possible. Every failure is an opportunity, and every failure gives you a new energy, new courage to work on. And I am pretty sure government will help. Government will not help much, but every organization can again stand on its own and run. And if you cannot stand on your own and run, you don't have a business to run. Trust me.
Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you, Anurag.
Thank you, Dr. Velumani. We enjoyed talking to you. So
Thank you.
I hope our audiences can learn from your experiences and your suggestions. And on that happy note, in 20 years, India will be the largest economy in the world. And, in April 2021, we'll be back to a new normal of growth. We will end this interview and we look forward to better times post-COVID. Thank you, Dr. Velumani.
Thank you, Anurag.